What's good, everybody? This is the Views from the 573 podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDaniel, and on this podcast, we are discussing the NFL at its midway point. And joining me and talking about the NFL at this point, I have with me one of the co-hosts of the ADP, the Average Dudes podcast, Matt Mormann. Matt, how are you doing?
Hello, Ryan. I'm doing pretty good. I'm in beautiful, snowy, cold Minneapolis, Minnesota this evening. I'm traveling for work, so I'm a little sniffly with the weather up here. So you have to excuse me on that one. It's going to be a brisk 30 degrees outside tomorrow when I'm outside the entire time. So, feel for me on that one. But hey, maybe I'll see Josh Dobbs while I'm out and about today.
Yeah, maybe you'll see Don, guy that needs to get accustomed to Minnesota here pretty quickly. And we were talking pre-show, man, what the shift from Arizona to the desert going up north. And it was like, what is this?
Yeah, about a 60-degree drop pretty quick here. It's only going to get worse. We're going to talk about it during the drive on the way up here, how, from now on, in Missouri, we get the occasional, hey, it's winter, but here's that random 70-degree day, right?
Right.
That doesn't happen in Minneapolis. Now it's cold, and it will be cold until March. And even then, it'll probably still be cold. But I think at that point, it might have, a day or two of relief.
Hey, at least it's consistent, unlike the Missouri weather. And you know what you're going to get.
You know what you're going in for. That's true.
Yeah. So yes, we are talking about the NFL at the midway point. We are going into week 9 this upcoming week, and so we are 8 weeks through of the season already. And we had the trade deadline, and that's kind of where we're going to start off. We had the trade deadline on Tuesday, and there were some names that were popped up like Saquon, a couple times, and DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, but a couple of those that have popped up did get traded, like Chase Young, who's going to the 49ers. You see all these deals, Matt. Which one you think? Which one caught your eye?
Well, I think the Montez Sweat deal is the first one that was kind of the big blockbuster of the day, and it was kind of a surprising deal because, I get it in that the Bears were not going to be able to draft a surefire, immediate impact player the level of Montez Sweat in round 2. I totally get that. I totally agree with that. However, if you look at where the Chicago Bears are at right now, they, to me, don't need to be spending a draft pick and money on a Montez Sweat when maybe in the offseason, probably not Sweat, right? Whatever team he landed on would probably be signing him if he were traded, or he would be tagged by Washington. But they would still be able to use that second-round pick, have a cost-controlled player. And by the way, that pick's going to be a high second-round pick. I don't know why the Chicago Bears are addicted to trading away second-round picks, and those picks end up being in the top 5 of the second round. You're not a contender, guys. And so that's the part of it that, to me, just made it really strange, is I totally agree. There are teams in the NFL who should have been trading a second-round pick for Montez Sweat. I do not think the Chicago Bears are at that point in their life cycle. But that's been the thing with the Chicago Bears for years to me. To me, the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields and his problems, I think I even said it on a Views from the 573 podcast. I did not like the Justin Fields trade because they did not have a roster around him, and you gave up a first-round pick in the future to get that deal done. We've seen what's happened there now, where they lucked out in a way in that they had the first overall pick to get DJ Moore in. And now you're seeing those exact same fruits come to fruition with Carolina, doing basically the exact same thing to move up for Bryce Young. Now they're like, well, hey, we need a receiver for Bryce Young. Well, you trade your next year's first-round pick to get the quarterback. And so, to me, just the Bears are not in the position to make that move, make that trade. And like I said, I think Montez Sweat's a really great player. And I'm happy and I feel justified by the fact that he went for more than Chase Young, because I do think he's better than Chase Young. And I think that's a much better trade by the 49ers, not just being lesser draft capital, but just draft capital that made more sense, right? The team makes more sense. To me, those are the two big deals, and those are definitely the two big ones that caught my eye.
Yeah, it feels like I remember us talking about the Bears all the way back in, during talking season in the spring, when they made this deal to, get DJ Moore and, the investments they were making. And it feels like we're all the way
I
back
love that
around
move.
on that.
I love that move, by the way. The trade in the first round pick to get DJ Moore plus draft capital
Yeah,
because that was the position they needed to go get a guy at, right? Like that was the one to do
exactly.
because right now you're in this growing phase at quarterback. And look, Fields may not be the guy. I kind of don't think he is, but you need to find out. You need to give him help. Like if you're going to spend that second round pick in a trade, it's why I think last year you were able to quasi justify overpaying for a Chase Claypool because hey, we just got to get our quarterback something. This
Mhm.
isn't getting your quarterback anything. Like if this is a move to help boost up that offensive line for Justin Fields, then okay, again, I may not love it, but I can quasi understand it a little bit more. This is one, again, really great player. He's worth a second round pick in a trade. I just don't think with this team.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a need for the Bears. They needed some pass rushing help. And one thing it does do to add that when it comes to the draft next year, that's one need they can kind of lower down on their needs. And, they're going to have to find out if Fields is the guy. Otherwise, they're going to be taking a quarterback with one of those picks next year.
For
Um,
sure. And I think the fact they've got two picks are both currently projected top three, I believe, right? With their own and
yeah.
Carolinas. Um, I think that they view that as playing with house money a little bit when it comes to the picks, right? Like, hey, we're going to trade this second round pick, but it doesn't, but it, in big air quotes here, it doesn't matter because we'll trade the Carolina pick and get a second round pick in that trade most likely. I disagree with that thinking though. Like to me, there is no such thing as house money, right? Like there is just you had more resources, use those resources smartly. Don't splurge on things. You never
Mhm.
just have stuff to waste. Even if you have a little extra, use it smartly, right? And yeah, that's why to me that was just kind of a bit of a confusing move.
Yeah, and maybe you can. It depends on what you can get for Fields if you do decide, hey, he's not the guy, and you do want one of those guys. But you don't know what you're going to get for him. It just depends on how the quarterback market would fall in the offseason.
What did the Jets get for Sam Darnold? Do you remember? Was it
Um,
a pick?
I'm trying to figure it out. Sam Darnold to the Panthers. I forget how what that went for. I
'Cause I
feel
feel
like it might have. I feel like it might have been a okay. No, so the trade to the Panthers. It was in exchange for a 2021 sixth rounder and
like
a second and fourth rounder in 2022.
okay, so 2 and a 4 with a 6 kicker. I feel like that's what they're looking at. Like, I feel like even though I do think more of Justin Fields than I thought of Sam Darnold at the time, I feel like it's pretty comparable situations, though, really.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know if he's the guy or not right now, and
Yeah.
that's pretty dire right now for a team that didn't make that big of a trade for a number one receiver that wants to know who's throwing to him. And
Yeah.
so,
To me, I would give Fields another year yet, I think. But if you're picking at the very top of the class, I think it's really hard to look at back-to-back first overall picks and passing those quarterbacks if you aren't for sure that he's your guy. But that's
yeah,
kind of where we're at.
and maybe if you do feel like he's your guy, maybe you go and tackle the positions that you need. Maybe you go out and get a Marvin Harrison Jr. or maybe you go and get with that other pick one of the top left tackles in the draft next year. And it's like, boom, we got two important positions locked down for the foreseeable future. Let's go. We got our two wide receivers. We got our left tackle. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's definitely the way they would go if they keep Fields around. What were a couple of the other trades from the week, Ryan?
Yeah, I guess let's talk about the other Washington pass rusher, Chase Young, going to the 49ers. I really like this trade. It does put Chase Young back with his former Ohio State teammate, Nick Bosa. And he's going to be asked to, I think, contribute in a way that the 49ers are already so loaded on the defensive line. You can just continue to rotate him in. You're not going to ask him, I think, to play like a huge role, but you're going to ask him to come in, give you some snaps, pair him with Nick Bosa on the other side and say, hey, let's go after him. I think the 49ers are just going to say, hey, we're going to rush 4 and we're going to go get after you. None of this blitzing. We're just going to blitz you with 4.
Yeah, it's very old school New York Giants in a way, right? Where it's just like we're gonna have
Yeah.
this loaded defensive front. We'll just bring those guys. It's brought a ton of success in the past, and I think you can never have enough pass rushers, right? Like that is a thing that I have thought for a long, long time. Is that you can never have
Yeah.
enough guys to go after these quarterbacks, and yeah, just keep loading up. If he's only a third down and long kind of player, I think that's fine. I think this is a great acquisition.
Yeah, and he's going to a better situation now, even though the 49ers have kind of trailed off here these last 3 weeks. And you get to put him on one of the better defenses in the league when fully healthy. And when that team is fully healthy, I think that he can really make an impact on that side of the ball. As far as other trades, there's a couple others, of course. Leonard Williams actually going to the Seahawks from the Giants. That actually happened while I was taping one of the earlier pods this week. Like,
Yeah,
oh, guys, we got a bit of breaking news. Leonard Williams to the Seahawks. I think, the Giants, they are in a position right now. They're 2-6 right now. They're not looking really good. Daniel Jones is hurt. And he's an expiring contract, and you're probably not going to pay him next year. So go and train to the Seahawks, a team that could use some defensive help up front and a guy that has produced in the past. I think that's a really good move on both these teams' parts.
yeah, he's a guy who a lot of teams should have been trying to go out and get because he's one of those guys. He's a run stopper and he's an interior pass rusher. To me, those guys are just so valuable. Every team that's got playoff aspirations should have been making a call for Leonard Williams.
Yeah. As far as others, Rasul Douglas going from the Packers to the Bills. I saw a funny little thing where Josh Allen had some comment about Rasul Douglas and talking smack to him, and now they're teammates. And now he kind of needs them to help out this defense that has suffered a lot of injuries, including that back end with Tre'Davious White being out.
Yeah, Trey White being out is obviously a huge deal. He's had injuries in the past too, so this is a good long-term move too for Buffalo because he's a guy who's under contract for one more year beyond this. And look at the AFC. You need corners, man. You got to be able to cover these receivers,
Yeah.
especially even in that division, right? With Garrett Wilson and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Oh my! So yeah, I like it a lot.
Let's see.
Right?
As far as
You keep
others,
going real quick. I'm going to step out, but you keep on going. You can do the next one. I'll be right back.
all right. As far as other trades that we had Ezra Cleveland from the Vikings, where Matt's at, going to the Jaguars, and honestly, that one kind of surprised me because he has been a guy that's really improved over the years, and they get him, and the Jaguars get some help up front to help block for Trevor Lawrence and for Travis Etienne. I keep on thinking of Trevor because I'm thinking of his brother at Florida, but you got Ezra Cleveland help out with Jacksonville. That can help out as they're sitting at the top of the AFC South. And then some of the other trades, you got Doms going to Minnesota, which that's a big deal considering the Kirk Cousins injury. And so Minnesota, they get some quarterback help with him. And then as far as any others, Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Detroit Lions, who was the only skill position player traded. So
Yeah.
other than that, it was a pretty big day for defensive players, to be honest. They were all traded.
Two quick things there. Number one, the Vikings. I guess it's really hard to tell a team that they should quit trying, right? Like midseason, especially one
Yeah.
that's they're not totally out of it because the NFC wild card situation is pretty open, right? Like, so I get it in that regard. That hey, let's make the desperation trade here for Josh Dobbs. It feels a little bit like when they traded Teddy Bridgewater, or not traded Teddy Bridgewater. They traded for Sam Bradford, right back when Teddy got hurt.
Mhm.
But I know they're 500, so like you don't want to just totally tank. To me, this team was going the wrong direction, though. Don't you want to see what you've got in the rookie Jaron Hall right now? And maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's totally nothing. To
Yeah.
me, they were a team that I thought the Kirk Cousins injury said, let's blow this thing up. Like, let's trade away. Daniil Hunter to me was just the obvious one, right? Like they
Yeah.
did trade away Ezra Cleveland. So like you did make a sell while also making a mild buy to, I guess, the idea of Josh Dobbs being competitive, right?
Hmm.
And maybe part of the idea is, well, we want a competent quarterback to keep growing Jordan Addison and a guy who can maybe convince Justin Jefferson to come back on our football field this year. And maybe that's the case, and I can understand that too. But I don't know. To me, you're always better off committing in a direction. And to me, they really kind of did a half measure each way with the trade off of Ezra Cleveland, but then still trading for Josh Dobbs on DPJ in the skill position. Yeah, that's the only one. And it's one of those things, the NFL trade deadline, I expect nothing, and I'm still always let down, right? Like, I feel like there was one time back in like 2009, 2010, where I was like, here we go. D'Angelo Williams is going to get traded. Jonathan Stewart time, baby. And then, like, NFL trade deadline passed, and I didn't even know it passed. And I was like, oh, so this is what the NFL trade deadlines are at. Like, the MLB trade deadline where there would be, Manny Ramirez trade to the Dodgers, right? Like all this craziness at the MLB trade deadline. The NFL one was always just like, did it happen? Wait, what week was it in again? Oh, it was week 6. Oh, shoot. Okay, missed that. It's week 12 now. So I expect nothing. I'm still disappointed by the NFL trade deadline year after year after year. But I was hopeful. I think maybe it's a good time to transition over to moves that didn't happen, right? To me, the lens that I view the league through being very much fantasy and Ravens, right? But the other one being the Chiefs, right? Living in Kansas City. Man, how do the Chiefs not trade for a wide receiver? Like how do you look at this team and see the Super Bowl aspirations? And I guess part of it's because they kind of got away with it last year. They won the whole thing. In my opinion, I have always been an advocate for this with, thinking back to like a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Aaron Rodgers. Mahomes is in that ilk where part of us paying you $40 million is you are improving our weapons. I'm totally in favor of that. But at some point, you also have to look at the fact that you are playing for a Super Bowl. You are trying to win it this year. Go get a guy. If Tampa wasn't willing to trade Mike Evans, then fine. Find something though. Like I think throw whatever you could at Cooper Kupp, right? Like find a guy, find something. And even if it's not a mega star like that, even if it is just a Donovan Peoples-Jones, it's something, right? Like I'm not saying DPJ would have been some big answer or whoever else they could have got of that level, right? A Rashad Bateman from the Ravens, right? Just like a guy, Isaiah Hodgins, right? A physical guy. There's countless of guys at that level, even, right? The wide receiver 3s of the world who could have stepped in and just given you something, some kind of juice to mix things up. Nothing. And that one really surprised me.
Yeah, well, if Will Levis hadn't gone off on Sunday, maybe D-Hop might have been somebody.
Yeah, and that was where I actually spoke with that on the ADP, how to me, with Levis having a 4-touchdown day and 3 of them going to Hopkins, how do you then trade him away? Because, Ryan, I hate to say this, but I think the team would like Banana Man to be their future.
Yeah.
And so what message does it send, though, that, hey, kid, you had this great game. Well, there goes the guy you threw all the touchdowns to, right?
Yeah.
So, to me, when that happened, that took Hopkins off the board.
Yeah. It was a tricky situation. I think it's kind of like a Viking situation where they end up winning and they're not going to trade any of their big players like Hopkins or Henry. And, that Will Levis game really kind of changed, like, I think how the Titans ownership kind of thinks like how this season can go. Like if Levis is able to do somewhat decent, like if he looked a lot like his 2021 Kentucky self instead of 2022 version, in which 21 he had Liam Cohen, who spent last year with the Rams, and he had a lot more weapons. He had a competent offensive line, and the Titans' offensive line is not competent by any means, but having a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, hey, that's a weapon, and that can certainly help him out.
it's a thing that for my personal experience, I trace back to like the late 2000s, right? Like as a Baltimore Ravens fan living in St. Louis, I got to see twice at the same time where it's like if you don't give a young quarterback any help, they're just not going to develop, right? Like Kyle
Yeah,
Bowler was bad, but Kyle Bowler never had a chance. Sam Bradford never had a chance. When Mark Clayton was Sam Bradford's number one wide receiver, and like acquiring Mark Clayton made a difference for Sam Bradford, he never had a chance. And so to me, I'm looking at Will Levis and I'm like, the fact that he's got a Derrick Henry to give the ball to and a
yeah,
DeAndre Hopkins to throw it to, he has a chance to actually develop and be something. It's on him to figure it out. It's on him to play well too. But at least he has guys that he can rely on a little bit. And by the way, Ryan,
yeah.
if you did listen to the ADP this week, I thought of you as the words came out of my mouth where I said, Will Levis is the quarterback I wanted Kyle Bowler to be. I
Oh man,
refuse to call him Joe Flacco because Will Levis is not elite. Oh, no, my video paused. Oh, there it's back. I got my lighting back. If you're watching the YouTube video, I went dark there for just a second with my fake lighting here. But no, yeah, Will
yeah,
Levis, I liked what I saw a lot. I really, really did.
yeah. And listen, I'm conflicted because yes, I want him to be good, and at the same time, I am thinking about the long term health and like I think what I hope to see the rest of the way is see some positives. He's not going to have a game like that every week. There's going
Right.
to be some rookie moments. But if you can start to see some positives, and if you do end up losing, fine. But if you see some positives, well, great. You can build on that for
Mhm.
next season. And if you do lose, well, fine. You get a draft pick. Maybe there's somebody available there where you're picking that you can help them. Maybe there's a wide receiver out there. Maybe they're in position to. I think what I want them to do is go get Brock Bowers from Georgia next year
Oh,
and get somebody at tight end to really help him out, be like a safety blanket for him. But I think, I've I said this to my dad is like, Vrabel is not going to let this team lose. He is not going to let them lose, and that could be a little bit of a problem here. Despite how good of a coach he is, it could be a problem here for a guy that doesn't want to lose.
the Titans always seem to win more games than they're supposed to.
Exactly. So speaking of coaches, I guess let's talk about one that got fired at the midway point. If we're ready to make that switch and talk
Yeah.
about Josh McDaniels, who is no longer the head coach of the Raiders after what happened on Monday night against the Lions. And I didn't know if he was going to be the first coach to be fired, but I figured he would end up being one considering how the situation going on in Vegas, how that was transpiring with Jimmy G not being fully healthy and Devontae not getting a lot of touches. I kind of felt like this is not heading for a good ending.
Yeah, the Josh Jacob comments were some of my favorites, where it was like, "So how do you guys fix the offense?" Like, I don't know. Ask the coach, man. I just run the football. I appreciated that, Josh Jacobs. No, I'm not surprised. Like honestly, if you have asked me pretty much at any point who I thought would be the first head coach fired, I think Josh McDaniels probably would have been my answer. Just because you look at like the combination of like bad teams and young new coaches, right? Like a lot of like guys aren't going to get fired immediately, right? So like I look at like Sean Payton in Denver, Brian Dable's not going anywhere, right? From New York.
Yeah,
Eberflus only in his second year. Frank Reich is in his first year. Arizona, right? There, Gannon, he's in his first year. So it's like a lot of these bad teams have either first or second year coaches who I don't think they're going to go away from. McDaniels, while he was only in his second year in Vegas, it's Josh McDaniels. He's been around for a little while. Like, I'm not surprised to see him go. Did I see Antonio Pierce is going to be their interim head coach?
he is.
That's pretty sweet. I like that. And Demario, D'Amico Ryans and Antonio Pierce both being head coach in the NFL. Like, I'm getting some gray hairs just saying those words. But I'm all for it. But like looking around at other teams, though, I think Todd Bowles is probably the coach I'd put on the hottest seat at the moment. Just because I feel like things are going badly there in Tampa. The defense that he's supposed to be so good at is part of the problem. Obviously, Baker's also an issue, and I feel like they're going to have a new quarterback next year And
Yeah.
so new quarterback, new coach, a lot of times you like to see that marriage come in together, right? Let your long-term head coach be the one that makes that decision. Brandon Staley, I think, is also a guy who
Yeah.
could be on that hot seat too, for sure. Other than that, I think that's about it for me. Like Belichick's not getting fired. He may be asked to retire at the end of the year, but like they're not going to fire Bill Belichick in the middle of the season, especially, right? So it's like I don't think I have any others that come to mind. Maybe Ron Rivera. I could see Rivera being on the hot seat too.
Yeah. I mean, they did just trade their two best pass rushers on defense. And, you want to see what Sam Howell's going to do, which, I mean, he had a pretty good game against the Eagles on Sunday. But yeah, he's definitely one of them. I think you mentioned Brandon Staley. I think he's definitely one of them that I'm thinking of right now. Now, the Chargers did just get a win on Sunday, so that can help. But they haven't looked all that great. And, that expensive defense that they've spent so much money on, it's had its problems and it hasn't looked all that great. And I was reading an article on the Athletic talking about how well, prior to Sunday, how well the Rams defense was doing before Dallas happened, and then the Chargers defense, and compared like how much they paid their players, and it's a drastic difference. Like the Rams are only paying Aaron Donald big money on that defense, and that's
Right.
it, and they're performing really well. But you look at the Chargers defense; they got all these guys are paying Bosa, Mack, Derwin James. They're
They
paying a lot
paid
of those guys big
they paid
time money.
JC Jackson. They paid JC Jackson to go away.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they traded him. And so, like, you look at him and how the Chargers defense has gone, it hasn't gone the way you expected. And if things don't get right here pretty soon, um, I think Staley could definitely be one of those guys you could look at as like, okay, well, maybe Chargers make a switch here. Maybe they get somebody that's more of an offensive mind. I mean, you do have
Well,
Kellen Moore in the room.
that's exactly where I was gonna go. I was gonna say conspiracy theory in me here of Kellen Moore chose the Chargers, knowing that Staley would be on the hot seat, and knowing that his head coaching audition could then be linked to Justin Herbert, right? Like that's a
Yeah,
pretty good audition teammate to have.
yeah, definitely. And so we'll see what happens with Staley and Chargers down the road. I mean, we'll have to see, but I think if you have another showing like you did against Kansas City, I think it's not going to be a good sign for Staley and for things to come. But I think, yeah, I'm with you on Riverboat Ron. I'm with you on Bowles with how things are going in Tampa. Like you said, the marriage between a new head coach and a new quarterback, that's ideally what you want.
And that applies for Washington too.
Yeah. And, honestly, I do kind of wonder. I mean, a lot of things will have to go wrong, but like if the Titans know that losing, do they want to move off from Vrabel and get somebody else? Like before Sunday, before what happened on Sunday, before Will Levis surprised everyone and had an amazing game, I was thinking, okay, we'll see what Levis has. If he does show some things, okay, we have something to potentially work with. Let's see what happens. If we do lose enough games, maybe Vrabel gets let go, and Cathron can hire his own guy. And like I had Ben Johnson in mind with the
That's
Lions.
true. That's true with the new GM. I was just gonna say, I feel like Vrabel has earned that clout though to have like
Yeah,
one
he has.
season and try to build it back up. Like I think with the Ravens, right? Harbaugh, we had the terrible 2016, I believe it was, which then took Ronnie Stanley with the early pick in the first round, and so I feel like there are head coaches where it's like you're allowed to have like one real bad season and see how you bounce back from it.
Yeah. As far as coaches go, I think that's it. As far as general thoughts, I mean, let's start on the positive side. I think there's been some surprises here so far in the early parts of the season, some good surprises. And I'll tell you what, I've been talking about the Lions a whole lot here recently. Of course, they had that stinker against your Ravens in which Lamar just went absolutely nuclear.
Yeah,
But other than that, the Lions have been, I think, the best surprise and the biggest surprise so far this season because they looked amazing. They looked really spectacular.
Yeah, and I'm super happy to see it happen. They're a team that going into the year, a lot of people were hyping them up, pumping them up a little bit. I got a little bit nervous. I was actually pumping the brakes a little bit on Detroit. I was a bit more backing up Chicago. I'm very happy to be wrong. I am so happy to see Dan Campbell, these guys just cranking out this awesome offense, a great defense. Like this team's really freaking good. And like they're honestly they've got to be viewed as top 3 in the NFC. I would put them above Dallas. I think them and San Fran's pretty neck and neck, and I think you got Philly up there at the top.
Yeah,
They're dangerous though, and the one thing they lack is winning experience. But the quarterback has that, right? Like Goff has gone to a Super Bowl.
yeah,
So I think that I think Detroit's in a really cool, fun spot at the moment. And it's funny. I think a lot of us, kind of thought that Goff was kind of a lame duck quarterback. I don't think so, man. I think he's gonna be their guy for at least the projectable future.
yeah. I mean, the pairing with him and Ben Johnson, to go back to him, has been really
Yeah.
amazing. And I have to imagine Ben is probably going to be getting some more head coaching looks and might take one because now you get that second year. It's like, oh, last year wasn't a fluke. So
And
now he can probably go into next year and get a job.
for Ben Johnson too, you don't have that Patrick Mahomes hesitation, right? Where like I think
Right.
part of why nobody wanted to hire Bieniemy is because, well, he's just riding the coattails, right, of Mahomes and Andy Reid. No one's gonna say that about Ben Johnson riding the coattails of Dan Campbell and Jared Goff, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's gonna view it as Ben Johnson's the wizard behind all of this. And so whether that's fair or not to be enemies is a whole different conversation. The fact of the matter is that Ben Johnson is going to really benefit from the fact that that perception is in his favor.
Yeah. The one thing you did say that kind of hurt me about golf is for the projectable future. And I think back, oh, wait, Lions drafted Hendon Hooker. That hurts the Tennessee fan in me.
I mean, I don't see any way at the moment you can think that anybody's coming in here replacing Jared Goff.
Yeah, no. Golf has been, like you said, he's been amazing coming in there. But you see what happened when in LA when he had a good offensive line, he had some good weapons. You saw how well he played, and he's got that in Detroit. He's got one of the best offensive lines in the league. He's got a really good receiving group led by St. Brown, Laporta, the rookie emerging, and he's got Jameer Gibbs, who had that big game against Vegas. He's got weapons now. He's got protection. That's honestly what Goff has needed. He's got that in Detroit, and he's thriving.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
They've definitely one of the best stories of the season for sure.
As far as others, the Eagles, of course, they've had another spectacular season. Looking at others, 49ers losing their 3 straight after having a hot start early on. That it's been kind of surprising. It started with that Cleveland game in which McCaffrey and Debo both went out. McCaffrey ended up coming back, but they've really kind of fallen off here. And I wonder if this is, the rookie hurdle that Brock Purdy never really kind of hit last year. Not starting all last year. Maybe this is kind of like he's hit kind of the quote unquote rookie wall and kind of like falling off a little bit here, being a little bit turnover happy.
And there's definitely an element of that for sure, right? Like you said, the turnovers have definitely been a problem here in the recent games. They've had 3 in back-to-back games and 1 in the loss to Cleveland. I think part of it also been a bit of injury bad luck, right? Ayuk got banged up early in the year.
Yeah,
McCaffrey missed part of the Cleveland game towards the end there, and we don't know if that would have made a difference, gotten the win or not, but he did miss some time in it. Trent Williams going down with injury also, so it's like
yeah, that's big.
different pieces going down around him. I don't think Brock Purdy is a quarterback who can overcome not having elite weapons, right? Like I think Brock Purdy needs elite help in order to be what we saw out of him. I think even just taking away 1 or 2 of those pieces is going to really bring him down. Now, when he has all those weapons, he can execute the offense and be awesome for it. I just think he needs all of his chess pieces in order to get checkmate.
Yeah, and the 49ers are really kind of like that. I mean, no Debo here the last couple weeks. And
Yeah.
so they're sitting at 5-3 right now. And couple weeks ago they were in the lead in this division. Now it's Seattle here up top here, sitting at 5-2, which they pulled out some gutsy performances here, sitting at 5-2. They're third in the NFC right now, and Geno, he's doing okay, and you got Jackson Smith the Jigba making some big time plays as a rookie, and of course getting Leonard Williams. That getting that move and making that move can really help them out, I think, later on, because the NFC. I mean, you do have the Eagles, and we just pumped up the Lions a little bit, and we'll see what happens with San Francisco. But the NFC, I mean, anything can happen here. It's not like the AFC. It's completely different where the AFC is really kind of loaded. The NFC, anything I think can happen.
Yeah, and someone's gonna get hot late on, right? And that's gonna be kind of the team that I think runs it in the NFC. Ryan, can I tell you one of my big surprises?
Yeah.
The New York Jets.
Yeah, the Jets have been honestly a surprise. Honestly, the whole Aaron Rodgers coming back maybe as quick as he will is kind of surprising. It's like, well, he probably did some, let's just say, some weird stuff to probably get to where he is. I don't know how many darkness retreats he went on.
You gotta be in a dark room for a long. It's like photo development, right? Like you gotta put the picture in the dark room so you can develop the film.
Yeah,
you gotta do that with Achilles tendon. Your Achilles tendon in a dark room and it'll just grow. But no, like this team was supposed to totally suck, and they kind of haven't. Like they gave the Chiefs a game on that Sunday night game, and they've won 3 in a row since. And it's not like they're playing fantastic and they're great and they're this juggernaut, but this was a team that was supposed to roll over and die. And maybe they lose that Giants game if Daniel Jones is even healthy, right? And they'll probably lose this upcoming game against the Chargers, but like they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, like that was not supposed to happen. And now, speaking of players coming back from injury, now we're at the point where Breece Hall is going to be fully unleashed for the second half of the season, right? Like this, if you were in fantasy, this is kind of always the plan for Breece Hall was, hey, get me to like week 8, get me to week 9, get me to week 10, and then let him win me a championship. I think that's kind of the Jets' plan here is now we're at that point of the year where it's been a year since Breece Hall's ACL injury. Let's let Breece Hall just totally run this offense. And the defense is awesome. Let's just follow that formula and let's go win some games here in the second half. And let's maybe, gosh, we talk about the AFC being so good. 8-8 might squeak you in, or I guess it'd be 9-8, now, but like that could squeak you into a playoff spot.
Yeah, definitely. Jets have been a surprise like you. I thought they were going to pretty much lay down and die and just be one of the worst teams after, because Zach Wilson, not the most spectacular quarterback, but I think the key thing here is he hasn't lost them games. He's been consistent, and he hasn't made any big-time mistakes, in which it's kept the Jets in games and given them the chance to win with that running game led by Breece Hall, with that defense that has all those stars on it. So I think as long as Zach Wilson can be a guy that doesn't make big mistakes and doesn't lose you football games, Jets, I think, could be like what you said, be a 9-8 team and kind of sneak its way in here. Is like, well, what? How did that happen?
Yeah, definitely.
As far as the AFC, taking a look at it.
I say, can we just take the temperature real quick on the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, how are you feeling about them?
So, okay, I feel bad about saying this. I think the Ravens defense is incredibly overrated. And that makes me feel bad, Ryan. I don't like saying that. Look, it's been really good. As I try and I struggle here to pull up the stats here. Here we go, team defense. They've been one of the best defensive units in the NFL this season. That's an undeniable fact they have. I look at the opponents here, okay? The Texans in week 1, CJ Stroud's first game as a rookie. I've been super impressed with CJ Stroud.
Yes.
But it was his first game, though. They played him in week 1. Then you have the Bengals in week 2. Joe Burrow still incredibly gimpy, gets re-injured at the end of the game. Then you have week 3 where you take on the Colts where Anthony Richardson is out. You get Gardner Minshew. Week 4, you get the Browns. Deshaun Watson is out. You get Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You get the Pittsburgh Steelers. Good quarterbacks are out. You get Kenny Pickett, their starter, but he's a bad quarterback. Week 5, you play or rather week 6, you play the Tennessee Titans, where Ryan Tannehill gets injured. I was in the Ravens game, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and so Malik Willis comes in midway through the game. Then you have the Lions game. Your one test, you pass with flying colors. Absolutely. 100% of that test, no notes. And then you get Arizona, no Kyler Murray, you got Josh Dobbs. Ryan, this defense reminds me a whole lot of the 2019 New England Patriots, if you remember that one, where the first half of the season, they played nobody. And then they played the Ravens on a Sunday night football game, and that was during Lamar's MVP season. Lamar absolutely torched them, and they fell apart in the second half of the year. I think I'm pointing at week 11 being the night game against the Bengals, the Thursday night. That's Thanksgiving game, isn't it? A game against the Bengals. I'm worried that that's their Ravens moment from the 2019 Patriots, because at that point, then Burrow's healthy, right? And I think that could be where it really starts to be the downfall of things. They lead the league in sacks, but when you look at hurries and like hurry percentages, right? So I think hurries, is a much better indication of how good your pass rush is, right? Like they lead the league in sacks. They've gotten there. They've gotten those sacks, but they are literally dead last in hurry percentage. How does that happen? You look at QB knockdowns. They're kind of middle of the pack in QB knockdowns. I think it's a lot of because the Ravens are doing very timely, smart, disguised blitzes, and it's working against these backup quarterbacks who don't see it coming, can't read it. I think once you face these better quarterbacks and just better offenses as a whole that can adjust that kind of thing, that's when you're really going to see things happen. That's why I really was pushing hard. The Ravens do not need to trade for a running back. They need to trade for a pass rusher. The Ravens should have been the team to go get Montez Sweat, to go get Chase Young, to get Danielle Hunter. Don't rest on the fact you lead the league in sacks because you're not getting consistent pressure. When you're sending pressure, you're getting home and you're getting it. But it's not happening consistently enough for me. And I think that's going to be their downfall.
Yeah, that game's going to be one to keep an eye on, considering the Bengals right now. I mean, Burrow is looking like he's getting to that point where he's healthy. And, that could be a game to watch as far as like, okay, how's he going to do against this Ravens defense and how the Ravens defense is going to do. If they do good in that game, do you think that quells any of your worries if they do well in that game against Burrow and company?
It probably does. I think the following week they play the Chargers. I think those are kind of the two games to me. Now, even this week, they got Seattle this week. This is a big test week. This is one that I want to see the litmus test here, right? Like if Geno and all those weapons in Seattle have some success against the Ravens, my alarm's going to be going up a little bit higher. If the Ravens can really stifle them, hold them to under 20 points or so, I'll be saying, okay, maybe I'm wrong about this, and maybe I'm being a big old worry wart, and they'll be fine. They'll be great. But no, that's definitely my concern. And interestingly enough, I actually am really excited about this Ravens offense. I think they need to expand Zay Flowers' usage and not just give him passes that are a yard from the line of scrimmage. Like, don't Rondale Moore him. Let him go down the field and make some plays. We have seen it at times this year. He can do that. Don't just make him Rondale Moore. Let him go down the field and make some plays and get some separation because he can do it.
Yeah. I remember us talking about Zay and, you're not feeling so hot about it. And, look at what he's done now. He's done really well so far as a rookie.
He has, but the things that I was worried about are there too, though, where a lot of it is very much designed to get him the ball short. And I think this last game he had 5 catches for 16 yards, right? So it's like, it's a great PPR game for fantasy. It's, you got 5 catches. That'll help boost it a little bit. 16 yards doesn't help your team, though, very often if you're the Baltimore Ravens. So that's definitely, I want him to be more than just a trickster. I want him to be a real wide receiver.
Yeah. As far as other teams, we mentioned the Bengals. I mean, they have been a surprise team or anything like that, but they're starting to get really hot at the right time. As far as anybody else, I mean, the Bills, I remember us talking about it in like preseason or like during talking season or whatever, and talking about the Bills and how we felt about them. And I think, one of the things that's really kind of hurt them right now, especially right now, is those injuries, particularly on that defense. Not having Matt Milano back there hurts. That's an injury you didn't see happening. And of course, you didn't see Tre'Davious White happening, but that
Well,
really hurts.
you say that, Ryan, and I push back on people who call players injury prone. Um, but I do think when it comes to a full unit, you look at the ages of these guys, and that's one of the things I pointed out in the preseason was I don't know which players are going to get hurt. Right? I think you're going to lose a lot of bets if you say this is an injury prone player. But if
Mhm.
you do say this is an injury prone archetype, then you're going to find some hits through all of that, right? And so I think that I looked at the Bills defense going into the season as being such a veteran unit and a unit who's had injuries, right? Both Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano have had significant injuries in the past. I didn't know that was necessarily going to be those two going down, but I was worried about injuries and age as a whole being a problem for this defense. And that's come to fruition. That's really been what's happening here. Good players, but this was what I was concerned about in the preseason. And then on the offensive side of things, it looks exactly like what I was worried about. There's nothing behind Stephon Diggs. Dalton Kincaid is starting to come around. And if
Mhm.
that box gets unlocked, that could be the difference. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen in year one or not because rookie tight ends don't tend to. That's a
Right.
bad bet to make is to bet on a rookie tight end. This year's breaking that mold a little bit with Sam Laporta and maybe Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave's been useful in Green Bay, right? Um,
Mhm.
but I think the Bills have kind of been what I expected them to be, but my expectations were not the consensus expectations at all.
Yeah, we talked about that, and I did kind of wonder early on in the season, like maybe it was too. The Bills were looking fine, and now we got to this point, 8 games to the season, where it's like, okay, I can kind of see what everybody was talking about now, and see why everybody was a little bit worried with potentially what would happen to them. As far as the other AFC teams or NFC teams, has there been any like big surprises to you? Any other surprises besides the ones that we mentioned?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think there really hasn't been a surprise terrible team, right? Like I don't think there's really been like the Bills have not been the juggernaut that they've been recently, but I don't
Right.
think there's been any real big disappointments, right? The Bills are still 5-3. They're fine, right? The 49ers, they've lost three straight. Well, they're 5-3. They're fine. If this continues, then that's concerning. But for now, they're
Yeah.
fine. I don't think there's really been any team fall off the face of the earth that I thought was going to be good. Um, can I brag about my beautiful Miami Dolphins for a second?
Yeah. Sure.
So I really wanted to pick the Dolphins to be the Super Bowl champions in the preseason, and I just didn't have the cojones to do it. And who knows, maybe it won't happen. But this is an example of a lot of people yelling, "This is an injury-prone player." Well, he's not injured. And we've seen a lot of quarterbacks get hurt this year, Ryan. That's one of the
Yeah.
big stories of this NFL season. Quarterback injuries. Holy cow. And there's 11 backup quarterbacks playing right now.
Especially in this past week.
Yeah. And so the fact that Tua is out here just looking like an MVP candidate with Tyreek, especially Tyreek, we all laughed. Ha! He's not going to get 2,000 yards. Silly Tyreek Hill. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
He might just get there, man. Like he is on his way to it. And Tua just looks awesome. And these Dolphins look awesome. And the defense looks really good too. Um, they are right there. I don't know how you can pick. I don't know how you can confidently pick any team to beat the Dolphins. Like you can pick them to beat the Dolphins. If you want to pick the Chiefs, sure, they have Patrick Mahomes. I get that.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can say with much confidence in anybody, though. And by the way, that goes for many teams, right? Like, I could not say with much confidence the Dolphins would beat the Chiefs either. I cannot say with much confidence that the Dolphins would beat the Eagles. That's the company they belong in. That's my point. They belong in that company.
Yeah. And they had that matchup at Philly, and looking at how they've faced these winning teams this year, they're 0-2 against them, and they've been outscoring them. And I think this Sunday against the Chiefs, that's going to be a huge litmus test for them. I think that's going to be one of the last big litmus tests against one of those great teams that's out there. See, like, hey, let's go and win. And yeah, it's not at Arrowhead, it's not at Miami, it's in Germany, but you still need to take note of it because if the Dolphins do win, like depending on what happens this upcoming week, they could sit at the top of the AFC if they pull it off.
Yeah, and I wish that game was in Arrowhead. Oh, do I wish that game was
Yeah.
Arrowhead.
Yeah. As far as has there been, let's switch and go to disappointments real quick. Has there been any really kind of disappointments?
Um, as far as teams as a whole go, I don't really think so. I mean, Green Bay a little bit, I guess, but I think there was equal reason to be concerned. I'm not disappointed by New York. I expect the Giants. This is. I expected them to be a garbage fire, but I figured they would be this way even with Daniel Jones. But his injuries kind of give them a bit of a pass in that regard. Like the Rams, they're 3-5. I didn't really have much expectation for them either. I guess
Yeah.
Chicago, right? Like I picked Chicago to win the North, but I had said at the time like they could finish last, right? Like that
Yeah.
they had this potential too, right? Like as much as I was hopeful that Fields was going to be Jalen Hurts and that this team would be really, really good, there was this was in the box too, though, right? Like I knew that going in that if I dive in this dumpster, there might just be garbage.
Yeah, how we talked about the Bears earlier in the offseason, we thought there would be a little bit of improvement. They did what they need to do to help Fields, but it just hasn't necessarily translated so far. Um, yeah, as far as looking at any teams that have been kind of disappointing, it is kind of hard to find any right now. I mean, everybody, you look at the standings, and it's kind of like what you expected. And there's some teams that have some rough starts, but it looks like they're starting to get a handle on things. Going back to the Bengals again, um, I think in fact thinking back on it, I think I picked Bengals 49ers as my Super Bowl,
I think
and
you're right.
I think I had the Bengals winning it. So if Sunday was any indication, maybe 49ers get their stuff together, the Bengals start to get hot, and maybe we have that and we get round two. But yeah, Burrow's getting healthy at the right time, and everybody else is getting synced in and locked in, ready to go. As far as other teams, I mean, Eagles have been good, 7-1, but and none of any really disappointments, I don't think. I think everything's kind of stacked up, where it is.
Well, and real quick aside, Ryan, I know we touched on the quarterback injuries, but I just think that this season, is it just because I'm in this fantasy football bubble? Um, Injuries this year are just absolutely more ravaging than I can remember.
Yeah, like it's been, we talk about quarterbacks, the running backs position. I know that's been something we've kind of discussed in group chat, or whether you and Tanner on ADP, is the running back position. And like there's been a lot of guys that have gotten hurt, and you kind of have to find some random guys on the waiver wire to help you out for a week. They're like, yeah, there's been just a ton of injuries here that's really kind of ravaged some teams and what they had hoped for this season. But yeah, quarterbacks, that's definitely been one. It has not been great. And again, this past week was terrible.
Yeah. I mean, Stafford, the Cousins one in particular, right?
Yeah,
But also Stafford, and then Pickett also for whatever that's worth. It's not like he's going to play on Thursday though.
yeah. I cannot wait for the Ryan and Peter Bowl that I forgot was going to be on Thursday night.
Yeah, how about
Uh,
that, Ryan? Both of the times when the Titans face either my Ravens or Peter Steelers, it's been on standalone games.
yeah, how about that? I expect them to lose. I saw a stat where like they have not won in Pittsburgh in a long time, and I think that's going to hold. But this is not the Peter and Ryan Bowl that I would have wanted. I would have wanted it to be like we talked about, Penn State and Tennessee. But I guess we're going to have to continue to wait for that for a little bit. Speaking of bowl games, Rebecca and I, are going to have a little bowl game of our own next week with Tennessee and
Oh,
Mizzou.
yeah. After Mizzou knocks off Georgia, right?
Oh man, I said this. I'm going to say it on the pod I'm posting Friday. I think it's going to be like at this time last year, Tennessee was ranked number one. Georgia was ranked below them. They went to Athens. Georgia probably ticked off like, hey, let's go beat them. No, it's a little bit different situation. But Georgia, their number two is like, hey, we should be number one over Ohio State. So like, oh, who can we take that out on? Oh, here comes Mizzou. Perfect. You know, I fear that's probably what's going to happen Saturday. But yeah, a couple bowl games here within the 5-7-3. But as far as the NFL getting back on track there, with 8 games into the season, and we're still ways away to Week 18. What are you kind of hoping to see out of the rest of this season?
Oh, what am I hoping to see? Well, to go into a fantasy aspect for a second, the big thing I'm hoping to see are some rookie second half breakouts and also the injury bounce back breakouts, right? Javonte Williams and Brees Hall for that.
Yes.
Um, but the rookies, especially the running backs, right? We saw a great thing out of Jahmyr Gibbs this past week. If we can get Bijan going out there in Atlanta, that'd be wonderful. All these wide receivers, right? JSN, Quentin Johnson, Rashi Rice. Jordan Addison was cooking, but now I'm a bit worried about him.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm hoping to look for from kind of that aspect of things. From the NFL side of things, the Bengals are definitely the one that I'm really keeping an eye on in the second half. That I think they're really surging, and I do have one dynasty team where I've got Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, force of power there, and so I'm hoping to see them really tear it up for the second half of the year and be awesome. I'm looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars also a little bit of like, I have not been taking them all that seriously personally.
Yeah.
I think it's probably because they had like that deflating loss to Houston, right? And I think that it's taken them a little bit to earn my trust back. They've got the 49ers this weekend. If they can somehow pull that one off, that'd be great to see. But they're definitely a team in the second half that I want to see. Do they belong with the big boys, or are they just what they were last year?
Yeah, that's a good point. And getting Cleveland at one of the guard positions that can really help ETN and Lawrence out. If they want to go and be unlike last year, really go and compete against some of these top teams. And yeah, 49ers, that's a litmus test despite how they've fallen these last 3 weeks. And the Jags, I mean, I'm looking at the AFC South. I mean, Texans, I mean, they've done well so far. D'Amico has done really well this year. Stroud has done amazing. Texans, I don't think are going to catch them. Titans, despite however strong their will is to go and win and say, hey, we are not out of it, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near the top. And for Indy, you're going to be without Richardson for the rest of the year. So for the Jags, the division is wide open. So I think you got that on lock. As far as the AFC, I mean, who knows what can happen? Anything can happen for them. They know they got the division. It's just focusing on like, hey, where do we stack up among the top teams in the AFC? Where do we stack up in general among teams in the NFL?
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any award predictions or midseason awards to give out?
Let me kind of take a look at what I had as predictions for this season overall. Yeah, Deadhead Bengals 49ers is Super Bowl. And looking at some of my I may have called Coach of the Year if it happens. I know we're at the midseason point, but I had Dan Campbell winning it at the
Oh,
end of this season. So that
I
might be a good call this year, at this point right now.
I would almost say that's likely at this point. Yeah, because it is they are like the breakout team of the year.
Yeah. Um, let's see. As far as other awards, I had Joe Burrow for my MVP. I don't know, like Tua has been playing at an MVP type level so far this year. I think I would probably have to give it to him. As far as other awards, I had offensive defense player of the year, Jamar Chase, Parsons for that. Offensive rookie of the year. Is it still Bijan? Or is it somebody like Addison? Or
Yeah,
I mean, I think you can make a case for Addison, but I mean, the situation in Minnesota now is different.
I think it's Puka.
Yeah, Puka. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Puka's been.
I'm wearing my Puka shell necklace right now, man. I think it's either Puka or Stroud. I think those are the two.
Yeah,
Unless Gibbs or Bijan really has a monster second half, I think it's kind of a two-horse race right now between Puka and Stroud.
yeah, that's good calls. Defensive rookie of the year. I had Will Anderson. The one name I've constantly heard being brought up is how good Jalen Carter has been for the Eagles, and that might be where I go.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm qualified to have a good answer on this one for you.
Yeah, it just may be like what I've heard so far. It's just like Jalen Carter has made a big impact so far in his short time in Philly, and right now it's looking like a pretty big steal by Howie Roseman. Surprise, surprise, Howie Roseman makes a move that's like, oh crap, he pulled one over on us.
Whoever saw it coming, the player who was projected to go first overall is really good.
Exactly. Yeah, as far as any awards, I think that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Now, if Burrow does get hot, I could see him winning MVP by the end of this, but I think Tua right now.
I was gonna say, I just don't know if his numbers will quite catch up, right? Like, because they're not that good from the first half of the year. I just think you'd have a hard time catching up to a Tua, and I think, you know, if things break right for Mahomes' stats are right there, Josh Allen's stats are right there. Like, if one of those two teams ends up being the one seed, like I could totally see that. Also, if Tyreek Hill does break the record for receiving,
Yes.
I think his name does get brought up. It's a
Yeah.
court award, make no mistake about that, but I think that his name does get brought up. Um, Maybe that's more likely candidate for offensive player of the year than it is for
Yeah.
MVP, but I think his name has to be in the conversation.
Yeah. I was about to bring Tyreek up. It's like, does he have a shot if he does get to 2,000?
Yeah.
And I mean, we got several more games to go. He could do it.
It's so tough for it to not be a quarterback, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Mahomes, if things get right in Kansas City, and last week was just like the temporary kind of moments, like, okay, Denver finally gets us. We're going to be fine. We'll have to see. Of course, that big game against the Dolphins, we'll have to see. But Mahomes is definitely somebody that could be up for this award later on. I mean, as far as any others, I mean, let's see, offensive player of the year, like Tyreek can definitely get that. Defensive player of the year.
McCaffrey scoring a touchdown every single game.
And, it hasn't really helped me in fantasy all that much besides about 3 games.
Oh, it's helped me out a ton.
Man.
Yeah. One of my teams is just living off of the Christian McCaffrey gasoline. And that can's gonna be empty this week though, and they're on bye. So we'll see how that goes. Starting Darrell Henderson and Chuba Hubbard. So,
Man, yeah.
But here's the thing: the guy I'm facing is starting Cam Akers and Amari DiMercado. So that's just what the running back position is.
Yeah. Like we talked about, the injuries have really taken a toll on those two positions, and that's where we're at with the running back position. Any other thoughts on potentially what we might see the rest of the way?
I don't think I do. I'm hoping to continue to see my little baby blue Dolphins just go on and keep on flying.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just hoping to see out of the Mayo Man.
Yeah, hey, go eat some bananas with that skin on and see how it goes for you.
Oh, dear. I saw a joke that said, maybe he finally got rid of the mayo and coffee thing. Maybe he's drinking coffee regular now. Maybe going to Nashville's really kind of helped. I was like, oh yeah, maybe that's not a good idea.
I think that's the key. That's the thing. I think you're going to see Titans fans everywhere start to do these things. If Will Levis continues if Will Levis is like the franchise savior, your fan base, like how the Bills jump through tables, the Dolphins are just gonna walk, or the Titans fans are just gonna walk around with like mayo and just like squirt it into weird things. They're gonna start having like mayo infused chili or something.
Oh man, the Vols have a thing with that mustard bottle a few years ago, and now we might be having the Titans with mayo. At this point, I won't be surprised if the Grizzlies or the Cardinals get something with ketchup involved. It's just like let's just get all the condiments involved here, man. But yeah, I think as far as stuff we might see the rest of the way, curious to see 49ers can bounce back. Excited to see if the Bengals can get hot, see if the Lions can keep this thing going. But as far as other than that, yeah, I think we're in for a treat the rest of the way and seeing how all these teams do and see how both of our teams continue to do, see what happens with your Ravens if that defense is going to be facing some tests here in a couple weeks, if they can stack up to that and see what my rookie quarterback can bring. So exciting times here, I think, for the next several weeks.
Oh, and somehow we're already halfway through this season. It flies by.
It always flies by. I was thinking about it as far as in terms of college football and where we're at. And like we're already at November. We're already towards the end here. I'm like, man, it feels like it just got here. It feels like I was just at Nashville for game 1 against Virginia, and like here we are in November and getting ready for all this cold weather that's finally about to arrive after all this time, and get here to the nitty gritty with some NFL football. So yeah, it should be a fun rest of the way. I do want to say, while I do have you on, I do have a little bit of a fantasy thing that I've been thinking about.
Oh
And I
boy.
told my, it's kind of like a more of a next year type of thing, but it's something I've thought about.
Okay.
I think with Marvin Harrison Jr., with how hyped he's been, I think he's probably next year's Bijan Robinson.
What do you mean by that?
I think as far as how hyped Bijan was, and as far as rookie, and like how good of a running back he was, and like how ranked he was, how highly ranked he was in some rankings. Marvin Harrison Jr. could have some of that hype. I don't know necessarily because running backs and wide receivers are different in
Right.
fantasy. But I think as far as rookies coming in, I think he can come in as that same regard, but just a different position.
I'm trying to see real quick. Yeah, got okay. So in one league that I just have quick access to, looks like Jamar Chase went like 72nd overall. Because I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Chase is like just the easy one to go look up and see where he went,
Yeah.
right? It's tough because he needs to fall into. It's easier to project a workload for a running back right out of the gate.
Yes.
Like even Jamar Chase, like it does take a bit of time to get that wide receiver going the rookie year, and then they're amazing in the second half, right? Think about Justin Jefferson, right? Like it took like 4 or 5
Yeah.
weeks, and boom. Odell Beckham, right? Took like 4 or 5 weeks, and then boom. So I think that's hard to project with a wide receiver to be that high up, but I like it. I mean, like Ryan, you know better than I do with college football. I'll catch up in March, right? But like,
Yeah.
is there any chance that like I sit here, I can only name you 2 players: Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr.
hmm
Is there a chance Marvin Harrison is going second overall? Is there any chance of that?
I mean, I definitely think so. I mean, I was just looking at mocks today just because I was curious, and I saw one mock having the Cardinals at 1 and saying, "Hey, we're going to pass on the quarterback, and we're taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1."
Is it that high?
Yeah, like there's it just depends on the team. It depends on if it's a team like the Cardinals that feels like, hey, we're fine with Kyler. Let's just roll with
Well,
Marvin
but
Harrison.
that's the thing, though. I feel like like thinking back to the Wentz and Goff year, right? The teams with those picks didn't need a quarterback, so they traded out.
Yeah.
We see that happen a lot, right? Where the team with one doesn't need it, so they trade out. I was just curious if a wide receiver could actually go second overall, because from everything I understand, Caleb Williams is still going to be the guy at 1, right? I know he's
Yeah.
not lighting up the world right now, but it sounds like he's still just going to be number 1.
Yeah. I definitely think when we get to that period of March, I think MHJ, or as Gus Johnson is trying to get going, Maserati Marv.
That's the
I
mouth.
I know he kept on. I forget which game it was. I think it was like during the Penn State game. He kept on trying to make it a thing. It's like, why is Gus trying to make this a thing? I definitely think he could be second overall. It just depends on which team. I mean, who knows? Maybe the Bears have those back-to-back picks and they take Caleb and Marvin.
If you're the Bengals, you trade T. Higgins and like 2 first-round picks, right? You'd be like, hey, take this guy and pay him, and take our next first-round picks, and we'll just take that one, and we'll pay Chase.
I mean, hey, when the Bengals weren't doing that all that great, it was like I saw a couple mocks that said that would be insane if they got MHJ.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Oh gosh,
Oh
that would.
man, probably the 2 star wide receivers that have come out in the last few years that have been like really awesome. Put them
Yeah.
on the same team and put them with Burrow.
Yeah.
It's almost like you'll probably see like LSU's offense back when they had Jefferson and Chase. It's like good luck stopping that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of one fantasy question I had. I mean, you are part of the ADP. I kind of had to ask a little bit of a fancy question here.
Yeah, like I said, I just feel like it's so hard to project that for a rookie wide receiver to step in immediately have such a role. And also, wide receivers, I feel like, are so much more connected to the offenses, right? Like you want those receivers in good passing offenses. I think Drake London's a great player. He's stuck in a low passing volume, though, right? And just thinking about, let's say he goes to Arizona, wouldn't be so bad, but let's say he goes to Chicago. Carolina doesn't have a pick, but just the teams that pick in that range tend to not be good passing teams, right? Like we really caught lightning a bottle with Burrow and Chase being paired up like that, and maybe he is the wide receiver who could unlock a quarterback in that way that Chase did. If it were Houston doesn't have their pick either, do they? Right? No, they don't. I was gonna say if it's Stroud,
they have a pick, but I think it's Cleveland's.
Okay, so we more middle of the road.
Yeah,
but if Arizona would be great, if it could, or if it's the Packers somehow, right? Like hook him up with Jordan Love, and then all of a sudden Love becomes great because of it.
Yeah. That's kind of the one fancy question I had since I have you on, and kind of felt the need to ask it while I have you here. Speaking of fantasy ADP, Matt, where can people find you and Tanner at?
Yeah, so follow us on Twitter at ADP Dudes on Twitter, and follow us we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Follow us. You can find it basically searching either ADP, Average Dudes Podcast is kind of the easiest ways to find it. The YouTube channel also, Average Dudes Podcast on there. And be sure to give that a follow, a like, a subscribe, all that good stuff. And I usually do kind of the early week stuff, and then Tanner does the later week stuff because of just how it works out with our schedules. I'm on the road a lot for work on Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays. So Tanner usually has your starts and sits on Thursdays and Fridays. I've got your Monday morning recaps, and I do the waiver wire either Monday night or Tuesday morning, depending on what can work for us. And we try to sprinkle one show in the middle of the week if we can. It doesn't always work out that way, but we always try to kind of give that one bonus if we can.
Yeah, so there you guys go. If you haven't followed the ADP yet, what are you doing? Go check them out. Definitely can help me and Peter out. Can definitely help me out. I got 2 teams that are, in one word, mid right now. That's
not the place you want to be. You never want to be in the middle, all that kind of stuff. But the nice part is that look, it just takes one, waiver wire claim to go from being mid. Now all of a sudden, hey, here's Devin A-Chain, right? Who we recommended in the off season even for teams to just draft and stash, right? Like things like that.
Yeah,
all of a sudden
exactly. Yeah. So if you haven't followed ADP yet, go and do that. If you haven't followed us yet, go check us out where you guys get your podcast. Check out the YouTube channel. You'll have the full video pod up as well. Check out 573 Podcast and can follow the pod on 573 Pods on X. I'm finally glad I said something other than Twitter.
I know. I still am just like in denial.
Yeah, I think I did it twice in one pod recently. So it's like,
they are set up the long game for an amazing April Fool's Day joke. Like on April Fools, they need to like totally revert back to all Twitter things and be like, hey, look, guys, it's Twitter. And then go right back to X on April 2nd.
Oh man, that would be such a cruel April Fool's joke, man. Oh,
Wouldn't that be amazing though? Yeah.
yeah, it'd be amazing just to have it for one more day. And then the
Mhm.
next day it's like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Freaking X. But yeah, everybody, that'll do it for us here. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow as we get ready for college football and NFL this upcoming week. As we talked about, lots of good games coming up on both. We also have a CFP recap and see where things are. We talked a little bit about James Harden going to the Clippers, so be sure to look out for that pod coming out tomorrow. But that's all we have for you all on this edition of the show. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all next time. See y'all.